audience, I'm sure, that would like to get on with their day. So the public hearing, item 3, is a public hearing to consider adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 9, Animals, General Ordinances, Martin County Code, including but not limited to prohibition of the sales of rabbits, dogs, cats at pet stores. Ms. Woods.
Yes, Mr. Chair. As the board knows, beginning in the late 2021 and early 2022, the board began receiving communications asking the board to consider an ordinance prohibiting the sale of dogs and cats at pet stores. The board directed the staff to investigate that. Mr. Stokas, along with my office, contacted the Humane Society of the Treasure Coast, who arranged for a meeting with representatives of the Humane Society of the United States, the Florida Division. And I'd like to mention we have Kate McFall here, who assisted us. At the time, that agency was working with the Florida legislature to try to do a statewide prohibition of the sale of dogs and cats in pet stores. And so they were instrumental, and I want to ask them in providing recommendations to us as well as directing us to other Florida counties who had adopted similar ordinances with success. I'll just briefly outline the revisions to our current animal control ordinance. One of the reasons this is so thick is we've decided the Sheriff's Department asked us to change the name of the Animal Services Division to the Animal Services Unit. As I say, we are the Sheriff's Department provides animal services enforcement for Martin County. We've added a definition for an animal shelter or a private nonprofit organization, and we've added definitions of cat, dog, and rabbit. And then we've also amended definition of pet store to exclude the purchase of rabbits, dogs, and cats. There's also an addition to Section 9.87A, which provides as follows, and I'll just paraphrase. Pet stores shall not offer for sale rabbits, dogs, or cats. This subsection shall not prohibit pet stores from collaborating with animal shelters or private nonprofit organizations, again referencing our new definition, to offer space for such entities to showcase adoptable rabbits, dogs, and cats, provided the pet store shall not have any ownership interest in the animals offered for adoption and shall not receive a fee for providing safe for the adoption of these animals. As I failed to mention, of course, your Animal Care and Control Advisory Board reviewed a draft ordinance on April 21st, 2022 at their meeting, and they suggested that we add rabbits to the prohibition because they're also apparently, in our Humane Society, verified that there's, around Easter time, there's a huge influx right after Easter of bunnies where people have purchased them and then realize that they're probably a bit more work than they anticipated. In addition, your ACCOB also recommended that there be, I'll use it, a grandfather clause or an amortization period that would allow any pet stores that are currently selling rabbits, dogs, and cats, that they'd be given a year to comply with the ordinance. And with those two additions, the ACCOB unanimously recommended approval of the ordinance that's before you. I do want to explain the amortization period. It allows that any existing pet store that's lawfully operating on or before June 30th of this year will be permitted to continue until June 30th of 2023. But as a condition of it, the pet store can't increase or enlarge its floor space. They have to provide proof to our Animal Services Unit of existing retail sales that they were in existence as of June 30th, 2022. It provides for the documentation. And failure to provide documentation will result in the loss of the nonconforming status. Any existing pet store that voluntarily abandons the retail sale for more than a 30-day period will also cease to have its nonconforming status. And again, I know we have some members of our ACCOB here, and they could explain that they felt it was fair to allow any existing businesses that sell to wind down their operation and transition to just the sale of pet supplies. And with that, I'm happy to try, I don't know if Mr. Stokas wants to add anything.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to take a moment to just recognize some folks that really helped me in this process. First, I want to start with Ms. Burgess, although I think I actually speak to her. I think we played a little bit of voicemail tag. Her providing me extensive examples from other counties and some sample language really got me started on the trail of this project. I wanted to thank Mr. Valenti with the Treasure Coast Humane Society in Martin County for helping me out as well as our members of the ACCOB. And I couldn't list all the not-for-profits, the folks I ran into. I mean, this was not a year-long process. We turned this around in about less than 6 months to get it to the ACCOB. But other not-for-profit entities that I talked to, as well as I wanted to thank St. Lucie County and Orange County Animal Services Divisions, because I made extensive calls, especially to the folks in Orange County who have enacted a very similar ordinance, as well as St. Lucie. And then also, finally, Mr. Willie Weiss, who did some research and some investigation to the 2 stores that are currently operating in Martin County. And without all those folks' help, I don't think, and of course Martin County Legal, I don't think we could have drafted, I think, what's an excellent example of an ordinance that will actually work and then also meets the new Florida state statutes and provides a transition time for existing businesses. I mean, it was a really good balance, and it was a real education for myself. So I did enjoy it.
I do want to mention that there are similar ordinances in our surrounding counties, and so a part of the discussion with the ACCOB, I think was mentioned this morning in public comment by Mrs. Campenny, that we. By taking action to this, we don't provide a haven for this sort of a situation of the selling of dogs and cats and puppies, rabbits in pet stores. And the staff recommendation, consistent with the ACCOB recommendation, is that the board adopt the proposed ordinance. Available for any questions.
All of that. We do have a couple lights. Commissioner Hetherington?
Ms. Woods, would this only apply to the unincorporated area, and would the city of Stuart, if so, would the city of Stuart have to adopt something similar? If it seems to me that the speaker that referenced the stores, that those might be in the city.
Yes, they are in the city. I've coordinated with all of the municipalities. Martin County provides animal control for unincorporated and incorporated areas, and so my understanding, we've made this ordinance apply to both incorporated and unincorporated areas of the county. If any of the municipalities wanted to opt out, they could, but the intent of this ordinance is to apply countywide. It would be enforced through our Animal Services Unit, which operates countywide within the city. So as to those, if there's 2 existing pet stores, they would be notified by our Animal Services Unit, and we'd coordinate.
And I just want to add, I have been in contact with Mr. Dave Dias since pretty much December of last year, so he's well aware of this ordinance. They've been following it very quietly. They recognize there's an issue, and I believe Mr. Mortel has been working with Ms.
Yes.
Woods. So they're prepared to do what they need to do, and I also know that Mr. Weiss has been working with the Stuart Police Department as well, letting them know what the Sheriff's Department's going to be doing once this ordinance is adopted.
I provided copies of the ordinance and the agenda item to all the Village of Indiantown, Town of Ocean Breeze, Jupiter Island, Sewell's Point, and City of Stuart.
You okay with that? Commissioner Campy?
Thank you. First off, I'm happy that we're bringing this forward today. I had the opportunity to originally hear about this when Carrie Burgess asked me to meet with her from the Farm Dog Rescue. And as Mr. Stokas mentioned, and I appreciate that he acknowledged Carrie and Frank from the Humane Society of the Treasure Coast. The collaboration there was helpful for us so that it was a unified voice. Couple of concerns. First off, Ms. Burgess was able to hand me a packet of information like you mentioned, and I gave it to our legal department that did a lot of the legwork. It wasn't like, hey, I have this idea, I think the county should be doing this, and best of luck to you. She really did the legwork, so I appreciate her efforts. And, you know, it's interesting that most of the not-for-profits and the Humane Society are located in District 5, so I have been really involved in most of those groups and use district funds to assist because I think that this is a very important issue. And for many of our residents, it's one of the most important issues is the fair and ethical treatment of animals. Two concerns. One, I understand, having been a small business owner myself, that there should be a transition period for people to transition out of this practice. However, to me, a year allows countless number of pets to still be sold under probably difficult circumstances. So we're basically, and then there'll be families that go in there unknowingly purchasing animals that we had heard from a speaker this morning might not be as healthy as they are promoted to be, might end up costing those families thousands of dollars worth of veterinary bills, might then be a burden on the not-for-profits and the Humane Society when people just figure, I can't afford a $2,000 vet bill for a pet that I just purchased. As well as the fact, and I'm not saying specifically that the ones that are located here in Martin County, but there is another side of this business, which is the financing of these pets for people that don't know any better, go into one of these operations, see these beautiful pets, and then buy one potentially approximately for $3,000 or $4,000 through a financing situation that then puts them in a difficult spot to then have to make these. So if there was a possibility of shaving that year to 6 months, I think that that is fair to the business, but fair to everybody else that I just mentioned. And if that is not an option, and even if it is, I think we also need to have the ability to have unannounced inspection of these facilities, the entire facility, not just come in and speak to an owner or an employee and not be able to see the back room, the closet, the storage facility out back. I think that we need to still understand that if these places are going to operate, that if it be for a year, that they should expect to run their operation as ethically and as appropriately and as morally acceptable as possible. Because this is fraught with a lot of peril for, obviously, the animals, and I agree with you about the rabbits. For whatever reason, a lot of people find it, I guess, cute to purchase a bunny and give it to their families for Easter, and within weeks realize they made a terrible mistake. And the only person or individual or the only life that pays the price is the rabbit that had nothing to do with it, that's given to a family that within weeks say, no thank you. But other than that, I'm very much appreciative to the members of our public that helped us put this together. I was talking to Ms. Burgess recently and to Mr. Valente, how this is another step that our board has taken. Originally, we passed an ordinance that did not allow people, I guess we penalized or criminalized the fact that some people during the downturn in the economy, when they would just abandon their homes, left their pets in their homes to die, unless the neighbors were to realize that there were pets. And then a couple of years ago, we passed an ordinance that did not allow people to tether or chain up their pets outside to a tree all day with no water or vulnerable to attack from other animals because they were chained up. So I think we're on the right track. I've asked my friends in the animal rescue business if there was other issues that other counties have done that we need to address as well. This is a step in the right direction. And when it's appropriate, Mr. Chair, I'd be thrilled to make the motion to accept staff's approval if we can talk about those other issues. Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's do that before we go to public. Ms. Woods?
To address the inspection, I think currently, if I'm not mistaken, the Animal Services Unit has the ability under the existing ordinances to inspect for keeping, because there's certain standards that are outlined in our existing ordinance for facilities that have animals there. So they would have that opportunity, I believe, to inspect. And I don't believe that there's anything in the ordinance that requires a notice. But again, that's a question of enforcement for the Sheriff's Animal Services Division. To shorten the period to 6 months, that's at the discretion of the board. The ACCOB had some discussion about it and recommended a year, but again, it's ultimately up to the pleasure of the board.
If my colleagues would too agree, I'd make that as part of my motion.
Before we go any further on that, when you were researching the other ordinance adoptions throughout the state, was there a timeline? Was there a reason for a year? Was there a reason for 6 months?
There were a few counties that, Mr. Chair, there were a few counties that did 6 months, but they were kind of ahead of the pack before the new state statute was brought into play. But Orange County just picked a year, and they were I believe, don't quote me on this, I think they were actively litigated against, and the year stood up as a reasonable time frame. I remember reading something like that. But then again, there were other places that did 6 months, some did 9. It was just, I think the ACCOB just had a discussion, and I think they just came down on a year because they thought that was reasonable for a time frame for a business to transition from one mode of business to the other. But there were also other members on the ACCOB that were compelled that thought, they argued from it should be 30 days to 6 months to a year. So it's really up to the discretion of the board. I think there were a lot of places that did 6 months. I'd say 4 or 5 counties that I read about. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Heatherington?
The rabbit thing kind of caught me off guard. But so if I'm going to be a responsible, say, a 4-H member or a FFA member, and I'm going to raise a rabbit for the fair, I'm not sure exactly if they get rabbits from stores or tack and feed stores, but would that prohibit some a 4-H member or someone from going in and buying a rabbit to raise for the fair?
No,
Mr. Chair, I think the idea is for pet stores,
Right.
for buying them from a pet store that's selling them. I don't know, and I don't know where people, but I would assume that if you bought it from a breeder or from a livestock,
What if a breeder then markets it at a feed store, which
Don't
is
know
where
that it's a
I
pet.
think maybe some.
That would be within, my understanding is that would comply with the ordinance because the ordinance deals with that you basically can't sell the pet. The pet store does not profit on the sale of the animal, nor does it allow for the rental of space to sell the animal. The transaction is occurring between you, the buyer, and the reputable breeder or the actual person that we're trying to mitigate a mill type of situation. So it would, and I know this is going to sound funny, but I actually talked to there's a few people that live where I live that are reputable rabbit breeders, and I know way too much about rabbit breeding, to the embarrassment of my wife, by the way, from the golf cart. That there are reputable streams in which, and they do go to feed stores. And this one lady I talked to, she sells rabbits at around 4-H time to the kids at like the feed store in Okeechobee. She doesn't pay rent. She's not, but she sells it, and that way they're kind of registered, I guess, kind of like dogs, that they know where the rabbit came from.
Actually sell it through the feed store?
Yeah.
Or does she advertise through the feed store and it's a private transaction?
Yeah, there's like a season. Like I guess you have to get the rabbit at a certain time and then raise it to show it at the fair. So she would she would advertise it and has a long-standing established relationship at this store in Okeechobee. And some of the 4-H kids from Okeechobee will go and get their little bunnies from there. But where the problem is if you have other stores that just constantly have rabbits, and we all think it's cute at Easter time to get a bunny, like Commissioner Campy said, then you go to the Humane Society of the Treasure Coast, and they have 44 rabbits 2 weeks after Easter, and that's a
I think I
problem.
understand. I just wanted
Yeah.
to clarify to see if there would be unintended consequences for those that would be raising those in a responsible way through a 4-H program.
I think legal did a very good job of trying not to break the transaction process for those of people who are reputable, both on the breeding side and on the consumer side. And I think the ordinance, of course, you can't catch every single person, but this net's pretty fine in the sense that it really takes away the transactional element of the businesses. So I, as a business, can't go and buy a bunch of puppies from out of state, have them, and then sell that puppy or kitten or rabbit to a consumer. It has to be really, you're connecting the consumer to the breeder. So there's no monetary profit that comes from the sale of animals, and then you get into this milling process, as I understand it, Commissioners.
Okay, we do have a handful of public speakers that would like to address this item. The first one up would be Michael Circus. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Michael?
You.
I apologize. The older I get, the more I find my ears are simply ornamental. On the positive side, I wasn't a good reader in high school, but closed captioning has really improved that ability. Michael Circus from Palm City. I just wanted to come up this morning and bring to you guys a simple truth I think has been overlooked. The way in which we conduct our actions is just as important, if not more important, than the decisions we actually make. This ordinance, what it's going to do effectively is create a monopoly in the benefit of not-for-profit organizations for animals sales in Martin County for domesticated animals. And let me be clear, I'm not necessarily opposed to that. But what it is going to make illegal private enterprise from conducting sales that they're otherwise legally allowed to sell here in the county to begin with. The reason why this is important is because when we highlight, even from staff's presentation this morning, this ordinance has been crafted from the perspective and the recommendation of not-for-profit organizations. Namely, a not-for-profit organization this county has almost $10 million investment in over 10 years. Why is all that important? Well, quite frankly, it's hard to suggest that there is no skin in the game from the commission, that there is no conflict of interest. Again, the way we conduct our business, regardless of the quality of the sentiment, is extremely important. Many people have stated, all five of you have alluded to, some of you have openly admitted, that there is a disconnect right now between the people of Martin County and their government. There is a feeling that the government works in benefit of the government, not necessarily to the will of the people. I'm not necessarily opposed to this ordinance, but it is clear, if I were a pet shop owner, the first thing I would scream is this is a conflict of interest. This is written by the people, they'll be sole beneficiaries, and this is a group of individuals that have been invested in by the county. So the idea that the five of you can cast a vote today and say with a straight face that there is no conflict of interest, if I were a pet shop owner, I'd be extremely concerned. I would highly implore you to make this a citizen ballot initiative or whatever it's called. Put it on the ballot and let the people of Martin County vote on it. If you do believe this is the right course of action, then sell your idea to the people of Martin County. Remove yourselves from that conflict of interest and allow the people of Martin County to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Circus. Gary Burgess, please. Gary, please. And following Ms. Burgess, Tracy Hickler, is that right? Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Carrie Burgess. I am representing the Farm Dog Rescue, and I don't have a monopoly on pet selling in Martin County. We noticed last fall that there were a couple of pet stores popping up in Martin County, and I think, as you've all pointed out, it was because the surrounding counties had created ordinances against such pet stores, so they started to flood into Martin County. So I had started to have conversations with the commissioners, and with the help of Jenny Sherlock, we had come forth with a recommendation for an ordinance change. Since that time, and I 100% support the reduction in the time into 6 months for the changeover on the pet stores. Since that time in the fall, we've already seen the repercussions come from the pet stores. So From a rescue standpoint, I run at 10 to 15 surrender calls a day from our local community, from actual owners. And with the pet stores coming in, I mean, we're actually trucking animals into our community, which is already a pet overpopulation issue. But that being said, the financial burden, which falls on the residents, the nonprofits, and at the end, the community at large, for all the medical issues that come up with the animals. I'm already getting calls from the community saying that they bought, this puppy. It was an emotional purchase. They spent thousands of dollars on it. The medical is so great that they cannot, afford to keep the dog, and they either need help and assistance financially or for us to take in the dog. So it's going to continue. So the time of a year is a challenge, just because there's that many animals that are going to be, put into our community. So I would strongly recommend the 6-month that has been, suggested today. But nonetheless, I really appreciate you adding it to the agenda. I appreciate the attention for our pets in the community. And I'm grateful, that we've had an opportunity to bring this forward. I recommend that you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
Yeah. Tracy Hickler. Following Ms. Hickler is Mary Hutchinson.
Good morning. My name is Tracy Hickler. I own Dogs in Bloom Dog Training, a local dog training company. The reason I am here today is to give a voice to the voiceless. I will attempt to only state the facts that I know to be true. It seems that most people see a pet store as a convenient location to acquire adorable little puppies, but what they don't think about, and for some reason the general population doesn't know about, is where all these cute little puppies come from. Because I'm quite sure if they knew, they would be just as upset as I am about it. As an industry professional, it is common knowledge that 90% of dogs in puppy stores come from puppy mills. Just Google pet stores and puppy mills and look at the connection. That means the majority of those adorable little puppies' parents live in, quite frankly, a living hell. Tiny cages with multiple dogs stuffed into one cage, animals that never see sunlight or touch grass, ever. They live in tiny crates with their fur matted from their own feces and urine. Animals that don't know any love or true care. Animals that are bred over and over and over again without any basic human care. Excuse me. And when they're no good and can't breed anymore, they aren't even humanely euthanized. Most places will just shoot them in the head with a nail gun because they don't even want to spend the price for a bullet or, God forbid, humanely euthanize them to end their suffering. So it's simply not just about the puppies in the stores, which I'll get to in a minute. It's about where they come from in the first place. This was brought to my attention about 2 months ago when I didn't even know that our little community had any pet stores and was blown away by the fact that they were allowed in the first place. In the last 2 months alone, I've had 6 new clients call in with dogs that they purchased from one of these local puppy stores. All of the puppies, aside from one, came out of the store sick. 3 had kennel cough when they were purchased and sent home. The stores never shut down to contain the virus, just kept working and selling sick puppies. Another one of the puppies was purchased by a daughter with an elderly mother. Her mother's beloved dog had just passed, and she thought, what a wonderful idea, what a convenient location to pick up this cute little new friend for her sad mom. Almost immediately after purchasing this puppy and taking this cute little thing home, they realized something was very wrong. That puppy spent the next 48 hours in an emergency medical hospital for animals and almost died. You see, when you get puppies from a puppy store, typically they are from puppy mills, where there is no health testing, no health certifications, and no regulations. I appreciate you listening this morning, and I also believe that 6 months is plenty of time for these people to get their matters under control and move on. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mary Hutchinson, followed by Celia Seferdis.
on my way up here.
Morning.
Good morning. Commissioners, I just would like to ask for you to please pass this ordinance, as the people prior to me have given the reasons for it to be passed in this area. I remember as a kid, I would go to the mall, and you'd go into to the mall where I lived, and there'd be a cute little puppy, and only was until I got older that I realized where those animals actually came from, as Tracy mentioned earlier. And like everybody else, a couple years ago, when I went driving down US 1, I saw somebody flipping that sign that said puppies. I was just flabbergasted that this was allowed in our community, because I thought at this day and age that those would be gone and they wouldn't be here. But because other counties have passed those ordinances and we have not, they're now in our community. I know that everybody that is in animal rescue would love to not be in the business, but unfortunately, here we are. Please pass this ordinance for the protection, as people said, of those animals that cannot speak for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Sadia? Good morning. That's the last public speaker forum I have for this item. Anybody else wish to speak on that, please get the bailiff your slip.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Sadia Saftaridis from Golden Gate. I'm hearing the ordinance about puppies and birds and stuff, but nobody mentioned chickens. Because Golden Gate, we have problem with chickens. They all over the place. So is anything you could add to the ordinance about chickens, banning them from the residential? I have no problem if the chicken is an agricultural area. However, we do have problem when they are waking you up at 4 in the morning or noises. And the chickens are very filthy. They bring snakes, they bring rats, they bring foxes. I mean, it's just ridiculous to have kids on one hand in this house, and then there's a bunch of chicken all over the place. So that's why I'm here. My NAC last night voted to support no chickens in our area, please. I'm only speaking for Golden Gate. So if you would please add something about chickens, if you could ban them or whatever you can do, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Might want to stick around for the next item. That's the last public speaker forum I have. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, back to the board. We had a motion. Did we have a second?
What's the motion?
The motion was for the recommended ordinance plus the added to it the reduction of timeline to 6 months versus a year.
Second.
I'm sorry.
If I may, so the change would be to the, let me get the right one. Section, Section 9.87A.19A, or no, B, would change the amortization period, so it would, instead of going from June 30th, 2022 to June 30th, 2023, it would be December 31st, 2022, which would shorten the time. And so just for clarification, that would be the period, correct, Commissioner Campy, for the motion maker and the seconder?
Yes, I think that's fair to the business owner. 6 months is plenty of time to either reinvent yourself or move to another county where they have yet to put these ordinances in place. And it saves the unnecessary burden for families and pets 6 months extra.
We have a motion. We have a second. Commissioner, you agree to the
Yes.
language? Anybody else from the board? Commissioner Heatherington?
I wanted to just pose that question to legal because they presented the 12-month, and I'm certainly fine with the puppy ordinance, but is that, I can't remember who mentioned that other counties had done that to prevent lawsuits. So do you feel that 6 months is going to open us up to legal challenge?
I don't think necessarily. I think 6 months, again, the 1 year was a recommendation of the ACCOB based on their professional opinion. But, again, ultimately it's the board's decision. And there have been jurisdictions that had a 6-month amortization period. So, recognizing Commissioner Campy's concerns stated, I think we have the same type of concern about the citizens of Martin County, so we'd be willing to, we can defend it based on 6 months.
My guess is if someone is inclined to challenge, they'll challenge whether it's 6 months
Yes,
or,
ma'am.
or a year. It doesn't really probably make too much difference at that level. And at the same time, Ms. Woods just said it, and maybe there's an additional way to say it. It's a health, safety, welfare issue relative to the operation of our community and our county, and that probably stands on its own in a very strong way. So we have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very, very much.